too. Selene struggled to free herself. The necromancer's grip proved unbreakable. She avoided his direct gaze, aware of what it could do. Even then, Selene knew that, sooner or later, Charybdis would either drain her strength from her, as he had done once before, or use some other diabolical spell to put an end to her. She eyed Zayl's dagger. If she had at least been able to give it to him, her sacrifice would have been worth something. Humbart had said that, with it, Zayl would have had a fighting chance. Somehow, she could achieve that. An invisible force tore the dagger from her hand. At first she thought it the work of Charybdis, but an angry grunt from her foe told her that it was not so. The dagger fluttered above, as if waiting. Selene stared at it, wishing that it would somehow return to Zayl. No sooner had she thought this, than the ivory blade darted toward the younger necromancer. It was her will that guided it. Selene realized she was the one making it fly to Zayl.
No.
Charybdis tried to shift her so that the Lady Nesardo would be forced to look into his eyes. Selene struggled to maintain a general view of where Zayl lay. Without warning, a huge form burst into the chamber. The Night Howler, bleeding everywhere, and with one arm hanging uselessly, dragged in with him 7 servants clinging to his body. Each step clearly took extreme effort, but the forest dweller did not stop. When one of those atop him moved too near his good hand, he quickly grabbed it by the head and quickly crushed its skull. His presence drew the other servants from Selene. Seeing the giant as the most immediate danger to their master, they fell upon the Night Howler with abandon. Charybdis' attention was also momentarily caught by the Night Howler's stunning arrival, and that proved all that Selene needed. Pulling up slightly, she fixed on Zayl's protruding hand. The dagger slid down between the webbing, fitting perfectly into the skeletal grip. Selene felt Charybdis' hand release her wrist, but before she could react, his fingers tightened around her throat.
You are endangering the balance,
he told her, only a slight inflection in his words indicating his tremendous anger.
There is no greater crime. You will be punished.
Zayl felt numb all over. His mind could barely focus, yet his will struggled to keep him from allowing Astrogah inside. Then, a wonderful and familiar warmth touched the hand that could feel at least. The necromancer's bony fingers tightened around something lying in the fleshless palm, and instantly, Zayl's hopes revived. The words came instinctively, words in the special tongue taught by Zayl to Rathma centuries before, words which caused the ivory dagger he now held to flare bright and powerful. Zayl felt the spider's sudden revulsion. As best as he could, the trapped spellcaster twisted the dagger to wherever he sensed Astrogah to be. One leg pulled away from his skull. The pressure on the Rothmanian's mind decreased accordingly. Encouraged, Zayl turned the blade back and forth. More legs withdrew and strands of webbing fell away as if air. Better able to move his head and arms, Zayl struggled to free himself from the hideous sack. His head suddenly pounded, and he realized that Astrogah was desperately trying to overwhelm him. I deny you, he told the demon. Slay me, but you will never have me. The pressure vanished. Zayl hesitated, strongly suspecting that it was a trick. The spider dropped from his head. Even as he silently rejoiced at his harrowing escape, the necromancer grew concerned over what Astrogah now planned. Time was rapidly running out for the demon to achieve his rebirth. Astrogah had to have something else in mind to give up on Zayl. Bearing that in mind, Zayl furiously cut away at the thick webbing. Each moment he expected Astrogah or one of Astrogah's servants to attack, but none did. And where was Charybdis in all this? Surely his rival would not permit him to so easily escape. As he cleared away the webbing, though, Zayl at last noticed other sounds, unnerving sounds. He heard a pained roar that could have only come from the Night Howler, who had somehow returned. There were the manic hisses of the transformed servants, the man-spiders, obviously flinging themselves on the forest dweller. The necromancer even heard Humbart's frantic voice calling to him.
Zayl, lad! Zayl! He's got her! That bastard has Coribotus, and he's... Sweet mother! Get away from there! Quick, Knaak! It's swelling!
The last referred to something near Zayl, something he just noticed in himself. He sensed Astrogah using the weakening boundaries between the planes to draw the power he needed to recreate his true self. But what did the demon use for a body? Zayl had only to look up to see. Astrogah had returned to Lord Jitten's remains, seizing them before they could grow too cold to use. The spider had covered much of the body with his webbing, and already some horrific transformation had begun from within. The noble's corpse had grown more massive than any mortal humans could ever. Already it rivaled even the Night Howler, and it continued to swell. Zayl muttered a spell and cast a dagger. It flew unerringly at the huge white sack, only to bounce off as it had hit steel. As the blade returned, a mournful cry snared his attention from the seemingly invulnerable demon. With a full score of attackers upon him, the powerful Night Howler had finally been overwhelmed. The brave creature dropped to his knees. He managed to batter another of his adversaries into pulp, then with a defiant groan, fell face down onto the stone floor. Zayl gestured. The teeth of Tragow materialized in force, and driven by his masked rage, pincushioned the gestures atop the furred giant. The children of Astrogah perished as one, living only but a breath or two longer than their valiant opponent. But there were still others, and worse. He saw Coribotus and Salene struggling near the far wall. There were forces gathering around the other Ruthmanian. They were forces which Zayl recognized as the formation of a most terrible spell. A spell which Coribotus planned to focus upon the Lady Nesardo. Gritting his teeth, Zayl looked to the dead Night Howler and began muttering the words. He would not let Coribotus harm Salene or anyone else again. The words were simply spoken, but the effort drained Zayl as even his struggle against Astrogah had not. Yet as he watched the mist swirl above the giant corpse, he felt darkly satisfied.
Coribotus! Zayl roared. Coribotus! As you seem to no longer make use of your soul, I see no reason why you should even carry it with you anymore.
As he hoped, his counterpart could not help but look his way, disturbing Coribotus' own spell at the same time. Above, the Night Howler, a skeletal form, a bone spirit with a vague resemblance to the furred giant, rose high up in the air on wings of ether. In many ways, it resembled the crypt fiend that had attacked Zayl, but it was so much more. With a vengeful howl, it flew towards Coribotus. The other Ruthmanian's reflexes were swift, but even Coribotus could not move out of the way in time. Instead, he forced Salene in front of him, just as the bone spirit reached the pair. But unlike the crypt fiend, the thing that Zayl had called up did not attack so indiscriminately. Those Zayl desired protected had nothing to fear from it. Salene was perfectly safe, even used in so base a manner as her captor had. Coribotus, however, was not protected. In less than the blink of an eye, the revenant darted around the Lady Nesardo. The armored necromancer did not even have time to gape as the bone spirit thrust its skeletal claws through his chest and pulled him free a moment later, bearing a silver glow in their grip. The shrieking specter immediately returned to the Night Howler's body, then dropped through it into the realm of the dead. Along with it took Coribotus' soul. Or had it? Even as Salene ran to Zayl, the grey-haired spellcaster, who had appeared ready to collapse, straightened again. Ashen-faced, but still menacing, Coribotus rasped,
A bit of soul lost is not so burdensome as you might think, young Zayl. Over the years, I have lost some before, but I have always replaced it.
He raised a hand toward the running Selene.
From those who truly no longer need it.
Selene! Zayl shouted. Watch out! His own reactions too slow, Zayl feared the worst for her. Yet as Caribitis gestured, and the talon of Drag Owl formed, Selene suddenly vanished. The bone spear instead struck the wall beyond with such intensity that the entire chamber shook and chunks of ancient mortar came crashing down. A chain reaction started, huge cracks quickly running all the way back to where Caribitis stood. As for Selene, she now stood to a distracted Caribitis. In her hand, a weapon of which Zayl was all too familiar. The sacrificial dagger used on Sardak.
For my brother!
The Lady Nesardo cried. She started to plunge the heinous blade into the back of Caribitis' neck, only to have his monstrous familiar leap out from the confines of his cape. As the spider tried to bite her, Selene defended herself and slew it. But from Caribitis' reaction, she might have indeed plunged the dagger into him. He let out an uncharacteristic cry and shoved her back. As his familiar tumbled into his arms, the stricken necromancer knelt to the floor and began frantically trying to heal the gaping wound. The shaken Selene materialized by Zayl, helping to his feet. He stared at the necromancer with red eyes.
Zayl,
Never mind. He pulled her back just as another servant leapt at them. Zayl held high his dagger, its light blinding the creature in mid-leap. It collided with the stone altar, and before it could recover, the necromancer stabbed it through the parasite atop the head. That done, Zayl held the dagger to his lips, then muttered. Around them suddenly formed a large barrier of bone, against which the other servants battered themselves to no avail. Taking a deep breath, the Rothmanian continued. We must deal with Astrogah before time runs out, for all of us. She looked at the monstrous transformation, shook her head. Unable to utter any answer, Zayl understood exactly how she felt. For the demon's work was nearly done. The sack had swollen to twice the height of the Night Howler, and more than that in width. Within it, and partially silhouetted by the sourceless glow, something that was in no longer Aldrich and stretched in shape. It had some semblance to the mutated servants, yet was clearly more foul. There were 8 limbs, and an overall appearance akin to an arachnid, but with some touches in the shape that were more human. A huge bulbous head sat atop, one with large clusters of eyes evident. Moved at the front of the head, marked what was surely a pair of mandibles. Through the webbing, coarse black fur, the demon's coat thrust out in many places. Zayl eyed the ceiling. He sensed that the moon of the spider had nearly reached its conclusion, and that the shadow would soon vanish. If that happened, and nothing had been done to stop Astrogah, then the demon would complete his transformation and walk the world in his true form, with all his powers at their peak. If that happened, there would surely be no hope for Westmarch, and perhaps for the rest of the Western Kingdoms. But what could Zayl do? He had failed at every turn to outwit Caribitis and the demon, and in rescuing Selene had only given Sardak sacrifice instead. Of course, the Rothmanian abruptly thought. It is all in the blood. He spun towards Selene. Listen to me. Forgive me for what I must ask, my lady. There is but one hope to cast Astrogah out before he is completely a part of this plane. Your blood.
My what?
Be at ease. We need not much. Not even that what we took in your house to summon Riordan. Only enough to tip red the point of the dagger you took. You are of the line of Astrogah. Your blood is that of 2 realms. Selene did not want to hear his words.
I am descended from that thing?
Only by blood, the Ruthmanian insisted. There is no other link. Your heritage is human, of this plane, but the fact that you have the one link to the demon is not only his blessing, but his doom. What allows him to bind himself here can also sever that connection. The Lady Nesardo's expression hardened.
What must I do?